The story doesn't begin with scandal or headlines or even whispers. It begins with silence, the kind that settles over Buckingham Palace when something shifts behind closed doors. For decades, Prince Andrew moved through those halls believing the rules didn't apply to him. He was the Queen's favored son, the one who always walked a step ahead of trouble, protected by a mixture of charm, confidence, and a royal shield that seemed unbreakable. If you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebs. Your support keeps these stories coming. But shields crack, even royal ones, and Andrew's fall didn't come all at once. It happened slowly, piece by piece, until the palace could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. To understand how everything unraveled, you have to understand the man he used to be. Long before his name became tied to controversy, Andrew enjoyed an image built on confidence and privilege. He was the handsome young prince, the decorated naval aviator, the Duke of York who traveled the world representing the monarchy. Royal watchers often said he carried himself like someone who knew the spotlight was his by birthright, and in many ways it was. Growing up, insiders claimed that the Queen doted on him more than the other, not in a way that diminished her love for her other children, but in a way that showed a softness reserved only for Andrew. He was her favorite, a label whispered by biographers, palace staff, and even those close to the royal household. That favoritism shaped him. As he grew older, Andrew developed a reputation for enjoying luxury at a level even other royals found surprising. Lavish trips, glamorous parties, circles of wealthy friends. He embraced it all. For years, this lifestyle was simply seen as part of his persona, the royal with expensive tastes, and an adventurer. If you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebs. Your support keeps these stories coming. Social life. But behind the scenes, some advisors reportedly worried he was drifting too far from the discipline expected of a senior member of the monarchy. They warned that the people around him didn't always have the best intentions. Andrew brushed it off. He believed he understood the world better than those who tried to guide him. But the world was changing. The royal family, traditionally shielded from scrutiny, now lived under a global microscope. Social media amplified every rumor, every headline, every misstep, and Andrew, bold, confident, and often unconcerned about optics, walked straight into the storm. The turning point began years before the public realized anything was wrong. Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein raised eyebrows long before it became international news. At first, it was just whispers within the British press. Why is a senior royal spending time with someone surrounded by serious accusations? Reports circulated that palace officials were uncomfortable with the friendship. Some even claimed they urged Andrew to distance himself, but Andrew insisted the relationship was harmless. He believed he could manage the optics, and for a while, he did. Then came the photo, the one that circulated across newspapers, magazines, and social platforms around the world. A single snapshot highlighted everything the palace feared. Public opinion began turning, slowly but unmistakably. Supporters expressed confusion. Critics demanded answer. The monarchy, famously cautious and strategically silent, found itself tangled in a story. If you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebs. Your support keeps these stories coming. He had no control over. The situation worsened when Andrew agreed to the now infamous BBC interview, an attempt to clear his name that had the opposite effect. What was meant to be a defensive explanation turned into a public relations disaster. Viewers were stunned. Commentators described the interview as one of the most damaging moments for the royal family in modern history. Even people who previously defended Andrew struggled to understand how he seemed so detached from the seriousness of the moment. Inside the palace, the reaction was immediate. Senior advisors realized the interview had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The Queen, deeply loyal to her son, found herself facing a decision no parent wants to make. That night, royal reporters described an atmosphere of disbelief, like watching a bridge collapse in slow motion. Rumors spread that key members of the family, including Prince Charles and Prince William, urged the Queen to take action. The monarchy's reputation was at stake, and the public was demanding accountability. Within days, Andrew stepped back from public duties. It was the first obvious sign that his royal life was beginning to fracture. For a moment, it seemed like the situation might stabilize. Andrew withdrew from the spotlight. Statements were carefully written. The palace's communications team worked overtime to contain the damage, but the story didn't fade. It resurfaced again and again, each time with new claims, new speculation, new headlines. Andrew stayed mostly silent, but silence wasn't enough. Public patience was running out. Then came the Queen's death, a moment that changed everything. With Charles now king, the tone shifted. He wasn't just a brother. He was the monarch responsible for safeguarding the institution, and Charles had a different approach. Where the Queen had given Andrew space, Charles believed in boundaries. He made it clear that the monarchy needed a clean break from anything that threatened its stability. Andrew's role, whatever remained of it, dissolved almost instantly. Titles were removed. Patronages vanished. The privileges he once took for granted were no longer guaranteed. Years of public life were wiped away in a matter of weeks. Andrew, once one of the most visible members of the royal family, became its most silent. His living situation became the next battleground. Royal Lodge, a sprawling mansion with more rooms than he could possibly fill, became a symbol of the conflict between the old world and the new reality. Reports claimed that Charles wanted him out, that the crown needed the property for working royals, that the era of Andrew living in luxury was over. But Andrew refused to leave. Sources described, "If you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebus. Your support keeps these stories coming." Tense conversations, private negotiations, and a growing divide within the family. For the first time, Andrew wasn't just sidelined, he was isolated. And yet, even with everything stripped away, he remained physically present at certain family events. One of the most striking moments was his appearance at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. The scene was powerful. The royal family gathered with quiet dignity, sunlight hitting the faces of the king, the heir, the princesses. And then Andrew, walking among them yet separate in every way that mattered. Cameras captured him standing slightly apart, a prince by blood, but no longer by role. It was a moment that told the entire story without a single word spoken. But that was only the surface. Behind the scenes, the situation was far more complex. Years of internal disputes, unspoken resentment, private discussions about security, finances, and the future of the monarchy. And as Andrew's world grew smaller, the public's curiosity only grew larger. In the weeks after the Duchess of Kent's funeral, people who followed the royals closely began to notice a subtle shift. Andrew wasn't vanishing from public life entirely, but the tone around him had changed. Every appearance carried a quiet tension, a sense that even the most ordinary moments felt staged, controlled, and heavily monitored. It wasn't just the press keeping their distance, it was the institution itself. For a man who once walked into rooms with an air of entitlement, Andrew now moved like someone trying not to draw too much attention. Inside the palace, the conversations became sharper. The monarchy, modernizing under King Charles, needed stability, unity, and clean optics. Andrew represented the opposite. Today's world expects accountability from public figures, and the crown can't escape that pressure. Behind closed doors, senior staff were reportedly exhausted by years of managing the fallout. They knew the story wasn't going away. Every new document, every resurfaced headline, every revived rumor pulled Andrew back into the spotlight at the worst possible moments. For Andrew, the isolation was creeping. People who once filled his calendar, his events, his dinners, slowly evaporated. Invitations stopped coming. International organizations distanced themselves. The global tours, the speeches, the military ceremonies, all gone, replaced by silence. Behind palace walls, staff members whispered that Andrew spent increasing amounts of time alone. Friends who had been enthusiastic in his prime were now cautious, careful not to be seen too close. But Andrew didn't view himself as finished. Those close to him claimed he believed he could still return. That one day, when the dust settled, the public would see things differently. His confidence, ever present, didn't fade easily. The problem was that the institution had already made up its mind. Royal Royal Lodge became the symbolic front line. The estate, sprawling, historic, and immensely expensive to maintain, represented everything that had once defined Andrew's status. While the monarchy was cutting back and streamlining operations, Andrew was still living in one of the largest properties granted to a royal not performing official duties. King Charles saw the contradiction. The new model of the monarchy couldn't support old lifestyles, especially ones that fueled public anger. Reports from palace sources described Charles as determined, even firm, insisting that every part of the institution needed to reflect integrity and responsibility. Andrew resisted. People close to him claimed he felt forced into a corner, stripped of dignity and identity. He had lived in Royal Lodge since the early 2000s. It wasn't just a residence. It was the last significant foothold he had left. Without a public role, without titles, without patronages, the home became his final anchor to the life he once knew. He wasn't going to give it up easily. This led to private conversations that insiders described as some of the most strained in modern royal memory. Andrew reportedly argued that he had a long-term agreement granting him the right to stay. Charles, if you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebus. Your support keeps these stories coming. On the other hand, believe that public trust in the crown was more important than honoring a deal made decades earlier. The debate wasn't just about a house, it was about image, loyalty, and the future of the monarchy. The media seized on every rumor. Headlines speculated about eviction notices. Columnists analyzed the family rift. Public opinion polls showed a nation divided. Some believed Andrew should be removed completely, while others felt he was being punished beyond reason. The monarchy rarely comments directly on internal matters, but the silence was telling. Charles wasn't budging. As the months passed, Andrew's world tightened even more. His security arrangements changed. Funding was reduced. His daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, stayed close to him, but had to navigate an impossible position, supporting their father without becoming entangled in the controversy. They visited quietly without fanfare, avoiding the cameras. Their loyalty was unwavering, but they knew the situation was fragile. Behind the scenes, the emotional toll on Andrew began to show. Friends described a man who felt misunderstood and betrayed. He believed the institution he served had turned its back on him. He felt that decisions made in the name of protecting the monarchy were really political choices. People close to him said he often revisited old memories, military stories, family traditions, years of service. In private moments, it was said he spoke of the past more than the present. The future was a topic he avoided, but the royal family couldn't avoid it. Their internal conversations centered on how to manage the next chapter. They knew the story wouldn't fade just because Andrew stayed out of sight. They also knew that every decision they made would be scrutinized worldwide. And on top of Andrew's situation, the monarchy was dealing with generational change, the king's health, the transition of responsibilities, and the increasing pressure on William and Catherine to modernize the institution even further. The tension reached a new level when reports surfaced suggesting Andrew wanted to return to public life in some capacity. Whether those reports were accurate or if you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebus. Your support keeps these stories coming. Exaggerated. They sparked intense backlash. Commentary exploded across social media. The idea of a comeback was immediately rejected by the public. Even longtime royal supporters made it clear trust couldn't be rebuilt that easily. Within the palace, the reaction was swift. Advisors communicated firmly that there would be no return, no halfway roll, no quiet re-entry. Charles and William were aligned. They couldn't risk reopening old wounds. Their priority was the survival of the monarchy, not the redemption of one man. This quiet but firm rejection left Andrew facing a reality he had long avoided. There was no path back, not in the near future, maybe not ever. His situation grew more complicated when financial concerns began to surface. Without active duties, his income streams were limited. The maintenance of Royal Lodge alone cost far more than most people could imagine. Rumors circulated that he was struggling to keep up with repairs, staffing, and essential upkeep. Some reports even claimed certain areas of the property were deteriorating. Despite the challenges, Andrew insisted on staying. The house wasn't just bricks and history, it was the last symbol of the life he believed he deserved. And giving it up would mean acknowledging that the story was over. Yet the story wasn't over. It was transforming. The more Andrew clung to the past, the more the monarchy moved forward without him. The gap widened with every passing month. The family photos taken at major events no longer included him. The public engagements, the state ceremonies, the Christmas walk to church. He was absent from nearly all of them, but absence can be loud. Every time a family gathering took place, the question resurfaced, where is Prince Andrew? That question hung in the air, not as curiosity, but as a reminder of the fracture the palace couldn't fully heal. And then came a moment that shifted everything again, a private conversation that would change the trajectory of Andrew's future, and the monarchy's plan for handling him. The breaking point didn't arrive with a headline or a public announcement. It arrived quietly, behind the tall doors of a private drawing room at Windsor. Only a handful of people knew the meeting was happening, and none of them expected it to become the defining moment of Prince Andrew's future. The king had requested the conversation, and when that request comes from the monarch, refusal is not an option. Those present later described the atmosphere as tough but controlled, a conversation long overdue. Charles didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His authority filled the room. Andrew arrived hopeful, perhaps even convinced, that this was the beginning of a path back. He believed that if he explained himself, if he showed remorse, if he acknowledged the damage done, his brother might consider giving him the faintest outline of a role. Not a full return, not a major position, just something that allowed him to feel part of the institution he'd been born into. But Charles had come with a different intention. The king began by acknowledging the strain Andrew was under, the isolation, the pressure from the press, and the public's anger. He expressed sympathy, even affection. They were brothers before they were royals. Yet the tone shifted quickly. Charles explained that the monarchy was now navigating one of the most delicate periods. If you love real, respectful royal updates, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to UK Celebooz. Your support keeps these stories coming. Periods in recent history, transitions in leadership, intense media scrutiny, global expectations of transparency. In that environment, there could be no ambiguity about Andrew's position. Then he spoke the sentence that would echo in Andrew's mind long after the meeting ended. There will be no return. Not now, not later. For a moment, Andrew didn't speak. His face, usually guarded, gave way to shock. He had imagined limitations, conditions, even restrictions, but not finality. He asked if there was room for reconsideration in the future, perhaps years down the line. Charles shook his head. The decision wasn't just personal, it was institutional. Allowing Andrew to re-enter royal life would risk everything the crown had been working to rebuild. Andrew pushed back, gently at first, then more firmly. He reminded Charles of his decades of service, his military record, his loyalty to the family. He argued that stepping back had been a decision made under pressure, not a choice. He said he wanted the opportunity to prove he could use his experience for positive work, charity, veterans, youth programs, anything that helped restore trust. But Charles stayed resolute. He referenced advisors, senior courtiers, legal considerations, global perception. The monarchy wasn't a private business. It was a symbol, and symbols must remain untainted. The conversation grew heavier. Andrew's disappointment shifted into disbelief, then into something closer to desperation. He worried aloud about Royal Lodge, about losing the one place that still felt like home. He asked whether the palace expected him to move into a smaller property with less security. He expressed concern about his daughters, about how the public treatment of their father might affect their future roles. Charles listened, but the course had been set long before the conversation began. By the time the meeting ended, something subtle but irreversible had changed between the brothers. Andrew walked out of the room with a mix of anger, humiliation, and grief, a man confronting a future he had never imagined. But for the palace, the meeting marked a necessary turning point. From that day forward, every internal plan involving Andrew shifted from uncertainty to clarity. Behind the scenes, discussions began on how to phase him into a long-term arrangement that was respectful but firm, a life outside of royal duties, permanently outside Windsor's walls. The public had no idea what had just happened, but signs soon began to appear. Small adjustments were noticed first. Security details were restructured. Staff at Royal Lodge received new guidelines. Budget allocations changed. Some of Andrew's longtime aides quietly left their roles, their contracts not renewed. Palace insiders commented that a transition plan was underway, though few knew the details. Then came the hardest part, the estate itself. Royal Lodge, with its sweeping grounds and near-mythic presence within Windsor Great Park, had become a symbol of Andrew's resistance. The palace believed that allowing him to stay there indefinitely sent the wrong message, that consequences were negotiable. Charles wanted Andrew moved to a smaller, more manageable property, something proportionate to his new position in the